In this episode, I travel to deepest Wales to visit Drala Jong, the headquarters and retreat center of the gTér sect of Tibetan Buddhism. I first interviewed the leaders of this sect, Ngakchang Rinpoche and Khandro Déchen, several years ago in an intimate interview in their home, during which they recounted the origin of their treasure-revealed lineage and discussed subjects such as crazy wisdom, mahasiddhas, and compassion as appreciation. In this episode, Ngakchang Rinpoche and Khandro Déchen give a tour of the grounds of Drala Jong, discuss the esoteric geomancy of the site, and reveal the methods used to identify and propitiate the local spirit of the land. Ngakchang Rinpoche and Khandro Déchen detail the methods and practices of the gTér, guide practice sessions in the Dzogchen meditation of sky gazing and other techniques, and tell stories of their lamas, such as Kunzang Dorje Rinpoche, Chimé Rigdzin Rinpoche, Dudjom Rinpoche, and more. I also meet the ordained caretakers of the center, witness the Sangha in their daily rituals of chanting and song, and receive a lesson in their physical movement system of Kum Nye from lineage specialist Sang-gyé A-tsal. So without further ado, Drala Jong.
Welcome!
So this is Drala Jong.
Yes, indeed. The front entrance.
So perhaps you could explain a bit what we're looking at here.
We're mainly looking at a French drain here. This is to soak up rainwater, because when we get bad rain it really comes down here in a torrent, and we've had to do a lot of work to prevent the place from flooding, but I think we've cured it now. So this is the quadrangle, I suppose, which is eventually going to be flagged. Unfortunately, we have to lose the lovely chestnut tree, because we were told that if we just let it grow, it would become enormous and the roots would undermine the foundations of the buildings. So that will have to go. And then the whole area will be flagged anyway and there'll be a culvert that goes under here to take the rainwater. And then this will be an area for lama dance, for chum. And down at the bottom, you see that stone, you see that little white stone there? That's the site for the monumental purba.
Oh yes.
Which will be roughly 25 foot tall. It's already been made and is in Austria at the moment. It was made in Austria. We have a student there who's exceptionally gifted with mechanical objects, and he's designed the internal structure of the purba to be it's based on aircraft fuselage design, so the thing is incredibly light, which has saved us a great deal of money on foundations and also transportation. So that's going to come over at some point when we raise the money to excavate for the foundations for it.
How big is it?
Oh, 25 foot high.
What?
So that will go there.
As big as that tree, or taller?
Yeah. Because Dorje Purba is one of the main practices, so that's an important thing. The site was established by cultural Ngakchang Rinpoche Rinpoche, who came here, went all over the land and designated that as the spot for it.
Amazing.
He did some interesting rituals, didn't he? Sort of geomancy,
yes.
Working out the site. At one point he took some milk and put it into a depression in the ground and measured the time it took to soak away to see whether it was a suitable position from the local beings, the Khandros, and to see if it was auspicious. So he checked out that was suitable.
He's the incarnation of Kachin Palgi, who was one of the 25 disciples of Guru Rinpoche and Yeshe Tsogyal. he was the one who specialized in purba, so he was the ideal person to find the place.
That's actually a question I had, have you done anything in terms of, or considered anything in terms of land spirits and Lu and all this sort of thing that's commonly done in,
Yes.
Well, go ahead.
Yes, we've done that. We spent some time looking at that. It's rather a long story. It goes right back to my meeting with Dudjom Rinpoche back in 1971. One of the things he asked me was about local protectors where I came from, and I said, I don't know anything. And he said, yeah, you know. And he said, you are knowing from very small. I thought, I wonder what he's referring to here. And so I said, you mean the Norse gods? Because I was very interested in Viking culture when I was young. So I knew quite a lot about it, and so he said, you pictures bringing. So the next time I went out, I took pictures of Thor, Odin, and you know, the whole range. And he looked at Odin and he said, this one Ekajati, and then there was the Midgard serpent, Jomaganda, and he said, this one's Rahula, and there was Thor. He said, this one Dorje Legba. And so that gave us the idea when we were looking at this place to look at what was already known here. And I got a book of local beings, you know, the kind of this grimoire that turned out to be in French, and I couldn't read it. So it went to Jalmé, who is French. He read it and told us what was in it, who was there. And there was one particular one called Yangantitan, which means Jack with the fire. And he was depicted in a certain form with his hand out, holding this sort of great blazing mass. And we then looked through the correspondences, and the closest we could find was Damchen Ngojim Barwa Mezer, who was very similar, and so that's the one we have here.
And what did you do do you propitiate them, or is there some sort of procedure?
Yeah, there are mantra practices around him, and we practice that here, and we've produced a tanka of Barwa Mezer, which you'll see later. It's yeah, and so you know, we have a sense of that here, of there being a personality of the place, and I suppose we relate to him as the personality of the place. We don't really go in for a great deal of Mahayoga ritual in this tradition, and so how we relate to Barwa Mezer is more in terms of a gestalt. Mm-hmm.
And what are the characteristics of that gestalt that you've observed?
Liveliness and humour, largely. It's he might not look particularly humorous, but well, you'll see. We'll show you the picture. We had it painted by the son of Gega Lama. His name always slips, but
no, I can't remember.
we know his father because we've been using his book of line drawings as references for the last 30 years. So he's son of Gega Lama, you know, but he's a very talented tanka painter, you know, Tibetan. He lives in Belgium, and so he's been painting some tankas for us, because although we have our own tanka painters, they can't keep up with the work, and so we have to farm some of them out to him, and he made a wonderful job of it, really wonderful. And he's produced some others for us as well, for book covers and whatever.
So what's here's the main house behind you, and there are these two wings here coming off to the side. What is currently happening in there, and what do you have planned for them?
Well, the one on the right, looking downwards, we're never sure whether to call it the left wing or the right wing because you don't know which way you're facing, but this is the wing that's been renovated, apart from this piece on the end which is untouched still, but the other part is all habitable. The bottom part is the shrine hall, and then the next part up is where Métsal and Jagyür live. This lean-to here, which I don't know when that was added, but that's a modern addition, maybe in the last 100 years, I suppose. That's going to be demolished and rebuilt. It'll come out a yard or so further, and it will extend up to the window and down to the door, and it will have a pitched roof on it that goes back up to the height of the main roof, and that will then be their kitchen dining room. And then in the end here, this is going to be a in the back portion will be a disabled bedroom bathroom, and in the front portion there'll be the office where Métsal and Jagyür will work, because they're both writers, so they'll be there at their computers. And in the back wall here, this works out amazingly conveniently. There'll be a window so that they'll be able to see who's ever visiting, just looking up the drive. So that's that. That's maybe the next thing that will happen. The kitchen dining room thing is rather important that it happens first, because at the moment we still have a kitchenette at the end of the shrine hall, which is holding us up from building shrine cabinets or doing anything, you know, permanent in there. It's painted, but that's all. And we've got a screen up that screens off the kitchenette, so the kitchenette will then move into there, and then we'll be able to start working on it. We've got Guangdrup will come over from Switzerland. He's what you describe as a ganze Macher. You know, he does everything. He's a carpenter, metal worker, and so he's going to build the shrine cabinets and the throne for the statue of Dudjom Rinpoche, because we've had we're having a statue of Dudjom Rinpoche made with Dudjom Rinpoche, and which has an interesting sort of history, because I was looking on the web for pictures of Dudjom Rinpoche, and I came across a statue of him, a lifelike statue. I'd seen them before, but not with a face like this. The face was how he was when I first met him, and it was really lifelike. And I kept it on my iPhone, and we went to Bhutan, and I thought, well, I'll generally ask around, because there was no information as to the provenance of this statue. It was interesting because the whole body was grey and the face was painted. It was obviously grey primer, you know, the thing had not been painted yet, and I tried in Nepal, nobody knew anything about it there. But when we got to Bhutan, our guide, Sonam Gyaltsen, we showed it to him, and he said, "You're going there." So it was at Chado Lakang, and sure enough, we walk in the door, and there's the statue. So we asked about it. We said, "Oh, we'd like to have one of these made." And he said, "Yeah, the body was made here, but the head was made in America." And it turned out that the head had been commissioned by Dungse Trinlin Rinpoche, and he had overseen it in minute detail. So, you know, because Dudjom Rinpoche was his father, and he wanted it looking really exactly as he was. And so Jagyür then found the two ladies, the two sculptors who'd made the head, and then we commissioned one from them, and they very kindly agreed to make it. So this will be the only other one in the world, you know, the one in Chado Lakang and one here.
You've got the head already, haven't you?
We've got the head. That's back in Panath. We're storing that in a nice dry place until such time as we can have the body made. We're not sure whether the body's going to be made in Bhutan or made here by a Bhutanese woodcarver who's the brother of Sonam Gyaltsen. He wanted to come here for a year to improve his English. So we thought that would be a rather lovely thing, that he could maybe come here, make the statue, teach some wood carving skills, and make some garudas to put round the place. So that would be almost like the one in Chado Lakang, but we're going to have him in the body posture of Guru Rinpoche with a Katvanga and Vajra and skull bowl. So we're also not going to paint it. We'll just leave it plain wood and stain the wood red and blue on the robes rather than using paint. So yes, that's rather exciting. That's maybe 3 years off, I would say, realistically.
What's the plan for this wing here behind you?
Well, the top section down to the second door there will be a kitchen and dining hall, which is whimsically to be known as the Yak and Yogini, basically because we found a photograph of a Tibetan woman riding a yak from old Tibet, and that will be the sign, you know, the Yak and Yogini. The bottom section, we're not entirely sure yet if we're going to use it for workshops or accommodation. I think we'll probably use it for accommodation and have the workshops in the riding stable buildings that are off down in that direction. And then right at the end, where there's sort of a sheep pen, or I'm not sure what it is. It a sheep pen, pig pen, cow pen, or
Probably a pig pen at one time.
This is going to be what's called a labrang. A labrang is, I guess, vaguely translates as lama house. Although we might house the occasional alpaca there, or vicuña. That will be a 3-story structure that will go up higher than the main roof there, so that whoever's teaching will stay there. And it will also be useful for when Dudjom Rinpoche comes, so that the ground floor will be a kitchen dining room, the next level will be a living room, the top floor will be a bedroom and bathroom, so that we can ensconce visiting dignitaries there. And that'll be, you know, separate from the rest of the place. with maybe a balcony coming off the living room so that Dudjom Rinpoche can observe the lama dances that are going on for, you know, Dorje Purba. But that's a long way away. Maybe not in our lives, you know, unless we have some incredibly fascinated billionaires turn up, who knows, but if so, it could happen with a little more alacrity. Yeah.
Do you want to walk up that side, then we can have a look in the Yak and Yogini?
Oh, on the end here, this building is going to be extended by about the width of that tent, with the same profile as the entrance lobby to the shrine room, so that there'll be a gradated track down here for wheelchairs, so that it makes it disabled friendly, and the entrance will be here for the shrine room, and that will be a place to hang coats and
take off boots and shoes.
Yeah.
So this is currently the home of our one remaining cockerel. We did inherit a flock of hens and a cockerel from the previous owners of the place. That was one of the conditions of the sale of the property, that we would take the hens, but unfortunately over the years that we've had the place, they've all been taken by foxes.
So this whole area is undeveloped.
Yes, it's been goose housing, this room here. Unfortunately, we lost our goose a few days ago to a fox. Ah, here's Mr. Cocky. Hello. Hello.
Ah, the one remaining chicken, there he is. He's become very friendly since all the others left. He spends all his time with people, so he's...
They're amazing birds, aren't they? They're tropical birds, apparently hens.
And that comb on top is a remnant of the Jurassic period. It actually relates them to dinosaurs. You know, like the Stegosaurus that has that thing on its back. That's what that is.
So this is currently tool storage up here at the moment. Various lawnmowers in there. We've had to do an awful lot of garden management, because when we first came here, this wisteria was growing into the roof and had extended down into the room. So there was a whole lot of wisteria that was devoid of leaves because it wasn't getting any light. So getting it right under the roof. So in here, I'm going to put the light on. This is the temporary kitchen that we installed for our most recent event, which is the largest we've had so far, because obviously the house kitchen wasn't big enough. So we have a big fridge, freezer, a big oven, hob, and sinks plumbed in here. This was all done in the last 2 months in preparation for the big ordination retreat, which we've just had. And this is eating space enough for the people who are here. So, I mean, eventually this will be the permanent dining room, but obviously it will be properly renovated and plastered and everything. The tent is here because it keeps it warmer, because we have used this in the winter and it's very cold, but the tent, you can have a heater in here and the tent contains some of the heat. And we have spare eating space. This marquee was erected for the retreat as well. Spare eating accommodation.
And you've ordained 4 people.
Yes, just recently, last.
And what's the significance of that?
Well, when you become ordained, you become a member of the lineage. And you formally take on vows, the 14 root vows. So, and it's something you have to work towards over a number of years. You have to have been an apprentice in this tradition for at least 5 years. You have to have accomplished a retreat requirement, a study requirement. You have to pass an ordination examination. And you have to be... you undergo a sort of a training with a Vajra friend who is here to answer your questions, here to put you on the spot, really, to make sure that you really understand what you're doing. Mm-hmm. And they have to vouch for you that you're ready to take ordination when it comes time.
I suppose the thing with ordination, what we do is slightly unusual because theoretically, when you enter into the practice of Vajrayana, you request someone to be your teacher and then you receive empowerment. Once you've requested someone to be your teacher and they've accepted, that person then becomes your Vajra master. Now, that's how it used to work in ancient India. It's how it used to work in the first spread in Tibet. But as the centuries moved on, empowerments came to be given to large numbers of people. Originally it was just, one-to-one. Now, of course, in the West, you could find yourself having taken an empowerment through having walked past a church hall, heard something interesting going on inside, walked through the door, been touched on the head with various objects and told you'd received empowerment. It could be that obscure. Now, to suddenly find yourself in Vajra commitment, having accidentally walked into a place, is not really that functional. We can't really go back to how things were in ancient India or even in the first spread, because people are getting empowerments all over the place, in every country fairly easily. As time has gone by, the kind of empowerment you can get has evolved, and now, it used to be that wrathful empowerment was difficult to obtain and you had to be very serious. Now everything is becoming easier and easier. And although I don't like things to be difficult for people, there's obviously a problem around Vajra commitment, taking a teacher and having a serious commitment there. I don't want to particularly go into the whole question of abuse, because I think we've looked at that before. But what we've done with ordination is that people can study and practice Vajrayana without that level of commitment. So many of our students don't have that Vajra commitment with us, and that only comes in with ordination. So we've tied it to that, so that if you really want that relationship, then you have to take ordination. And of course, Dudjom Rinpoche requested that I established this ordination in the West, which is what I've spent my life doing. And so there are people now to carry that forward. And for us it's very important because it establishes a lineage of practice that is non-celibate. And it's important that that distinction is obvious to people. So the wearing of robes lets people know that if you want to take practice seriously, you don't necessarily have to go the way of monasticism, that you can be a non-celibate, non-monastic practitioner. So we give no encouragement to people to take ordination. It all has to come from them. And so the requirements for it are, if anything, far more stringent than they would have been in the East. I mean, the examination is a 1,000-question examination. It has to be taken over months. So that anyone who takes ordination is capable of teaching to a certain degree, because they know enough to do that, maybe not in terms of experience, but in terms of factual information. So there's that, there's the retreat commitments and the practice commitments, and being vouched for by a Vajra friend of your choice who helps you with it if you have problems with it, maybe advises you not to take it or whatever. So that in brief is how the thing functions. Mm-hmm.
And how will those 4 ordainees' lives change, or routines change? Is there any change in that way, or have they already been living the lifestyle of an ordained person?
Yeah,
there should have been.
So ideally there'll be no change, because they're already there as soon as they start working toward it. Obviously the study continues, because we emphasize continual study, not simply from books, not simply from us, but from other lamas. We have all kinds of contacts now in Nepal and Bhutan, and opportunities for people to study. For example, I think you probably spoke with Sang-gyé about Poa. So all our students who've practiced Poa go to Jomo Sampal Déchen Rinpoche for the final insertion of kusha grass into the skull. So that's all set up in that way. And we have other lamas with whom people study, and we encourage them to study with any Nyingma lama who visits. Other lamas also, but mainly Nyingma, because people have limited time and resources. So.
And they may have met these lamas on their pilgrimage, because that's also a requirement of ordination, that they engage in a pilgrimage in the East to go to a country where Buddhism is just the norm. It's not something special like it is over here. So we expect them to go on a pilgrimage to have that experience.
Yeah, because we don't like Vajrayana being an alternative. It's not an alternative religion. It may be that is what it is in a way here, but you go out east and it's not an alternative. That's just the nature of the religion in that country, and it's really important for people to recognize that, and also to experience being accepted as normal somewhere. That there's nothing special about what they're doing. People are obviously friendly to them there, and but there's no status in it in that way. They're just accepted as practitioners. Mm-hmm.
Okay, shall we keep going?
Yeah. I think it's kind of nice. I really like what they've done here. It's extraordinary. I would never have thought of it. Putting a tent inside a building, but it's remarkable. And we've all eaten here, and It's been a little bit chilly, hence the cloak, you know, but it works, and it's...
They actually achieved an immense amount of work to do this, because the floor is a dirt floor, which they had to level, and then cover, and then lay that lino.
You know, even getting hold of these carpet scraps from a carpet shop that was throwing them out, you know, a lot of research went into it all.
And everything's done as cheaply as possible because we just don't have the funds at the moment. I mean, we will develop it, but at the moment it just functions, which is good.
Yeah.
Turn the light out. So this is the main farmhouse, which provides most of the residential accommodation as it is at the moment. We have 2, 3, 4. We have 4 bedrooms. No, we have 5 bedrooms with 1 downstairs, a kitchen and a living room, and 2 bathrooms. So that's the current accommodation without camping. So it's not enough for us at the moment, but that we will seek to
remedy.
Yes, improve upon. So do you want to go into the house?
Sure,
now?
yeah, let's go for it.
I'm not sure which is, I suppose that's the front door, although mainly we use this one that goes into the kitchen.
Let's start in the kitchen, shall we?
Here's some signs that will appear. This one will be at the entrance when you turn off the main road, but we're not putting it up until we've had the change of use. And when we've done that, we'll take the Panti Postman sign down and put this one up. Or maybe they'll both be up together for a while so that people can get used to it.
So the whole retreat centre is owned by the charity Sangha Turzong, which is a registered charity, and they had to change their whole structure and become a new charity that was allowed to own property. So that was another tremendous amount of work that had to be done by the members of the committee before we could even consider purchasing property. So this has such a history. The acquisition of property is such a complicated manoeuvre in terms of charitable law. So this is the kitchen, farmhouse kitchen, which we use when we have small groups of apprentices in the winter. We will use this kitchen rather than the temporary one that we've erected for the ordination. So.
This will eventually be the library, with maybe some kind of mezzanine area, so we can have books going up to the ceiling. We have quite a number of books. They're not all here yet, but eventually there'll be a library of several thousand books here. Especially when we're dead, because they'll get all ours. And I've been collecting Vajrayana materials since about 1966, and a lot of those, well, they're not all that fascinating. Some are ancient travelogues of Tibet or whatever, but all out of print now with some wonderful old pictures. We have all the hideously unreadable material from Evans Wentz and Giuseppe Tucci and those ancient Tibetologists. But they're all interesting in their own way, and we've tried to keep up with it, but the number of books they're just not purchasable now. So I used to buy everything from all the schools, and then I had to cut back to just Jagyür and Nyingma, and finally just Nyingma, and finally just Dzogchen, because it's not possible to buy everything. We have quite a large number of those, art books too. We have some rather wonderful art books. Those are things that have to be purchased immediately they come out, because things just they only appear for a short while. They don't keep them in print. So we've concentrated on trying to preserve books for a library that will be of use in the future. So yes, was this? Yeah, we could.
So this is the scullery. All our washing machines, dryer, storage.
One downstairs bathroom. Through here there's this will be a bedroom in the end. Well, at the moment it's a small part of the library. Yeah. There are still books in packing cases. This is just all that we've unloaded. I see there are 1 or 2 copies of Wisdom Eccentrics there.
So this is a temporary bedroom, with a sofa bed down.
I think Jagyür uses this as office space at the moment. Oh, this is a Chimé Rigdzin Rinpoche up here. This is it's called the Chimé Rigdzin Rinpoche Library, because as well as being a great yogi, he was an astonishing scholar. He could actually speak Sanskrit. You know, he was a Sanskrit scholar and was really encouraged study. This is him in our house. Way back in the early 80s in Diana Street, Cardiff, in Roath. Yeah. So then, this at the moment is the cold weather dining room.
Yeah.
And living room. Place where we give interviews to people. I think this will probably turn into 2 bedrooms, or 1 bedroom with bunk beds in it and whatever else.
So you're really going to load up on the accommodation?
Yes.
As much as we can. I suppose there are all kinds of things to say about things that might seem insignificant. We have quite a tradition of connections with our lamas from the past. What Khandro Déchen is wearing, this white cardigan, is actually far more interesting than what I'm wearing. Because this was given to Khandro Déchen by Kunzang Dorje Rinpoche, and it was the one he wore for many years. So when we pop our clogs, that will probably have a label on it saying where it came from. It's
So this was erected for the ordination because we needed places for shoes, basically. Outdoor coves.
So this will be replaced in the end, by a building, an extension of the shrine hall, with an entrance here with a ramp.
You have to squeeze past a chair here in order to get in.
So this is partially as it will be. We've painted it as far as we could.
Painted it during the quarantine. So there were very few of us to paint it, were there? That was a labour.
We've managed to acquire some rather marvellous things. This iron Garuda is 17th century.
Where did you find that?
Oh, it was found for us by our student Jennifer on eBay, of all things. It just turned up, and she was able to acquire it for an extremely reasonable price. So here it is. She cleaned it up. It was in rather awful condition.
So when you're here, and I know several of your students are here also, Métsal, Jagyür and Sang-gyé, do you use this shrine room for, as is sometimes done, daily rituals and so on, coming together in the shrine room each morning and evening or something like this? Yeah. What sort of things occur in here out of retreat?
Well, there's practice every day occurs here, and probably when we've had the change of use, it will be also a public venue, and members of the public will be able to come in and join in on the daily practices if they wish.
During the pandemic, while there was nobody coming here, Métsal and Jagyür have been Zooming the morning practice from here every day.
And what is the typical, is there such a thing as a typical morning practice in your lineage?
Well, it's a combination of silent sitting, which is punctuated by practices of yogic song. And there, in a sense, there is no particular morning practice or evening practice. It depends largely on the personal practices of the people involved. We do have a group practice which goes through Guru Rinpoche mantra, Yeshit Sogyal mantra, 7-line song, Dorje Rinpoche, and the lama nalja of Machik Labdran, and that comprises a practice. And it can take anything from an hour to 3 hours, depending on the length of the silent sitting. But, so silent sitting punctuates everything we do. Mm-hmm. In the evening, there would be protector practice, for those who are practicing that. And that will be fundamentally the Mazadosum, Ekajati Rahula, and Dorje Legpa.
Your way of doing silent sitting, because it's sort of, there's a reason you call it Shiné and not shamatha, isn't it? At least that's the first part of it.
Yes, we tend to use the Tibetan as much as we can rather than Sanskrit, but the reason we don't call it shamatha is because it's part of the 4 naljors, and there are no Sanskrit words really for the last 2. So you'd have to start with shamatha, vipassana, Nyime and Latong. So we use the Tibetan words for them all. Another reason that when you say shamatha, it tends to mean a certain kind of silent sitting practice, and those can vary. When one speaks of Shiné in terms of the 4 naljors, it's from a Dzogchen perspective, and so it's formless. There's no concentration on the breath, there's no visualization, it's simply sitting. Then we say Latong rather than Vipassana because the eyes are open. And the approach is very different. I think shamatha and Shiné are actually a lot closer than Vipassana and Latong, because with Vipassana it could be a contemplation, this is one style where you find yourself in a state of stable Shiné, where thought is not arising, and then you contemplate some aspect of Dharma. This is one style of Vipassana, so it can really vary according to the lineage and traditions. So for us, it's not helpful to use the Sanskrit words. For us, Latong is finding presence of awareness in the dimension of that which moves in mind. That which moves in mind, the word for that is namtog. Now, conceptual thought is namtog, but not all namtog is conceptual thought. There can be all kinds of arisings in mind that are pictorial, that are sensational, that can't really be described as discursive thought, and yet there's still movement there. So the practice of Latong is to find presence of awareness in the dimension of the movement of Namtog. So that obviously, that sounds very different from what you may have heard of as Vipassana. But this will be, from the Dzogchen tradition. So we have the four Naljos, which are the Ngondro of Dzogchen Semde. People often think that the word Ngondro means the 100,000 prostrations, the 100,000 Kyilko offerings, the 100,000 Dorje Sempa recitations of the 100-syllable mantra, and the 100,000 practices of Lama Naljo or Guru Yoga. But this is actually the Tantric Ngondro. So there are other Ngondros. There's Dzogchen Ngondro, there's also a Ngondro for Togal, because Ngondro means preparation. And so for everything, there's a preparation. Right down to eating a meal, there's a preparation. For taking a bath, you have to take your clothes off. This is the Ngondro. So Ngondro is that which brings you to the state at which you can practice. So to bath, you have to take your clothes off so you can bath, so that arriving at the state means removing your clothes. That's what that is. So with our tradition and with some others, you have Dzogchen Semde, which is how you approach Dzogchen. One of the problems is that the lineage of Semde and Longde have been almost entirely lost. And so now all that remains really is Dzogchen Menakde. And you cannot approach Dzogchen Menakde. It has no Ngondro, because the Ngondro is there in Semde. So if you've lost that, then you have to approach through... that's Rachel. If you... I'll turn that off.
She'll be ringing to wish you.
Where was I? I was somewhere.
The Semde and Longde has been lost.
Yes, so because the Ngondro for Dzogchen lies within Semde, if Semde is lost, then you have to approach through Tantra, which means you have to have the Kherim, Dzogrim, and you have to go that path, which is why many people will say you have to approach Dzogchen in that way. But that's simply because the Ngondro has been lost. But where you have it, the four Naljos are set up to bring you to the base of Dzogchen. So that's how it exists within our tradition.
And is there a condition upon which the practitioner goes from Shiné to Latong, for instance, from one to the other? Does one have to achieve or attain something or recognize something, or is it an accumulation of time? Or
no, you can go into Latong as soon as you've stabilized Shiné. So there's no, it doesn't work like repetitions or time. It's actually experiential. So when you've arrived at the state where no thought is arising, and you've stabilized that, which means that it's not just a few moments every time you sit. What that would mean is that you can remain in that state of no thought arising for at least 10 minutes, I would say. That would equate to stable Shiné. Probably in old Tibet it will be longer, but I think for us with a scattered mentality, I think 10 minutes probably equates to an hour. I know what I was going to say. Menak de. Menak means no word. So where there's no word, there's simply the practice, the transmission for practice, where the meaning is incipient in the practice instruction. There's nothing else to say, so it's impossible to go straight into that. Mm-hmm. Whereas with Dzogchen Semde, there's a great deal of information about the nature of mind. Semde is the series that has the most information in it. So that's where one would begin. And then with Shiné, you arrive at the state where thought is not arising. You then open the eyes. The posture is with the hands in this position. The head is slightly downwards. The eyes are looking about a foot in front of the knees, and the eyelids are hanging. It's often said the eyes are half open or half closed, but that you can't actually do that. If you try to half close your eyes, you'll find that they flicker. It's impossible to keep the eyes like that. So the idea of having the eyelids hanging is that there is a little light entering the eyes, and that is simply to keep you awake. You could close them. If you don't go to sleep, if you don't become drowsy, then there's maybe no need to have light entering the eyes, but for most people it's helpful to have some light entering the eyes. So then when you move into Latong, there's a change of posture. The hands go to the knees, the head looks forwards and the eyes open slightly wide. So that's quite useful, but that's not the only method. The more common method is to combine Shiné and Latong. This is where you sit straight away with the eyes wide open, and stable Shiné is regarded there as being undisturbed by thought. Thought is there, but you don't follow it. Many people find that easier, because they find it very hard to arrive at the state where there is no thought. But there's a problem with that if you go that way, then the transition into Latong is more difficult. So whichever way you approach it, there's a difficulty. With the gTér Semde Ngondro, the difficulty is at the start in letting go of thought and arriving at a point where thought is not arising. But then the practice of Latong is much easier. You simply change posture and find presence of awareness in the movement of that which arises. If you go the other way with the eyes open at the start, there's no change of posture, and you simply have to segue into that, which is then more difficult. So there are advantages and disadvantages to both. And our students practice both. If someone's been struggling for years to arrive at a state where thought is not arising and they just can't do it, then we put them onto the other method. The other method is one that's, I believe, is taught by Ngakchang Rinpoche. So, and that is actually the more common method of Shiné and Latong. So, amazing things that are here. these 5 Tamjin Purbas that are in the triangular base, these were made by Akyong Dorje, who was a disciple of Kyungchen Aralingma. And these turned up individually over a number of years in various shops in Boda. And we were very lucky to find them. They were in a bad state of repair. We had to boil them for hours to get rid of the chemical inside them that was making them verdigris. The verdigris was just coming through the metal. But so those are there as a lineage treasure. We have all sorts of other purbas that have come down to us from various different lamas. At the moment, as I say, it's all rather ad hoc and things sit all over the place, but eventually they'll all be in shrine cabinets. This is vaguely a sort of a protector plus purba shrine. Up here we have a statue of Damchen Gawangapro, who's the Vajra blacksmith riding the goat. So in our tradition, he's a manifestation of Dorje Legpa. In other traditions, he's a minion of Dorje Legpa. Next to him is Zarahula. We don't have a statue of Ekajati yet, but those are on order at the moment from Boda. Up here we've got various lamas of the tradition. On top, not really filmable, is Geogyür and Métsal. They're backlit, so you won't see much. There's Geogyür and Métsal and Yeshu Tsogyal. And let's just remove this thing. On the top row is Kunzang Dorje Rinpoche. This is a statue that we commissioned. Then there's Kyungchen Aralingma, who's the origin of the gTér. And then there's Dudjom Rinpoche, because we have a very close association with the Dudjom Tér, even though we don't practice it. We have a very close connection with that line and with the lamas of that line. And next coming down is in the middle, there's Aroyeshi, who's my predecessor. He was killed in an avalanche, so although I say he's my predecessor, I don't have that great a deal of memory of it. On the right, or on his left, is Aye Khandro, Jomo Aye Khandro, who's Khandro Déchen's predecessor. And on the left, on his right, is Ashi Khandro. Aye Khandro and Ashi Khandro were sisters, and they were the sangyums of Aroyeshi.
Are these the same statues that we filmed at your home shrine?
Yes.
They've been moved here, have they?
No.
Oh, you had some.
This is another set. Well, I think that there must be about a dozen sets of these three in the world, in different places. Then there are various other lineage lamas here. There's one of Dudjom Rinpoche, one of Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche, one of the Karmapa. One of the most amazing things we have actually, these are pliques. These were made by our student Nima in Switzerland. She studied the Tibetan art of applique, and so she's learned all the specifics of how to make them. These are rather unusual because usually appliques are a 300 or 400 foot long and hung down the fronts of gompas. So it's unusual to have them this size. And we've had some very nice reactions from Himalayan lamas to these, who are sort of vaguely surprised by them because they've never seen them this size before. And of course, because they're this size, they're partially three-dimensional. So aspects like the earrings, they have actual conch earrings. And Kunzang Dorje Rinpoche here, if you get close enough, you'll see has got actual rings on his fingers, or they're partial rings. But one of the nice things about this is all these lines are horsehair that have been wound with thread, which is a particular Tibetan device in applique. So this is Kunzang Dorje Rinpoche, and this is Jomo Sampel Déchen Rinpoche. This was the first one we ever made. This is not made in Tibetan style at all, because none of us knew how to do that at the time. And we were at the time having camping retreats in Penant Valley with Shivam O'Brien, if you've heard of him, Irish storyteller. You might like to talk to him, actually. Very interesting man. He tells stories and gives shamanic workshops and whatever, but he used to let us use his place for retreats. And the idea of this initially was to have, in our outdoor practices, I had it in mind that we would use this outside, erected like a tent, you know, with dowels in it, you know, guy ropes. But it's never been used for that purpose. And so having made that, then the next one that was made was this Yeshut Sogyal at the end. And this again wasn't made in a traditional way. You'll see if you look at it closely that how we've actually organized the folds of the robes is that we've simply doubled up the material and stitched it down, which makes it quite thick. These were machine embroidered in Kathmandu. There was an original face there that was horrible, but we replaced it. Then the Yeshut Sogyal was made. The first one that came near the Tibetan method was this one here, and Nyima worked on this one, but that was before she had the training in Tibetan applique. This is Lingesa. And at the moment, Nima's working on a large applique of Dorje Purba that is going to go here eventually, and the two of Kunzang Dorje Rinpoche and Jomo Sampel will go up behind the where we sit at the end there. And then each one will have a flying shelf coming out of it, which is something of an innovation of mine. We'll make two little holes in each of the tankas and embroider around them, and then there'll be a glass shelf that will go into the wall, a flying shelf, you know, without supports. It'll just have rods going into it. And then there'll be a statue of Jomo Sampel on hers, statue of Kunzang Dorje Rinpoche on his. On each of the appliques, there'll be a statue. And that's basically to make better use of the space, because although it's quite a nice large space, it's not actually large enough for what we want to put into it, so we have to double up on things. This one will have the two statues on horseback in front of it, along with Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche's painting of Jagyür A-tsal. Then there'll be a picture of Trungpa Rinpoche on horseback. That's a sort of a photoshopped painting of mine. That'll go up there too, with a picture of Trungpa Rinpoche and Kunzang Dorje Rinpoche and the various lamas who are connected with Jagyür A-tsal. So there'll be a saddle in front of it, a Tibetan saddle on a stand with saddle blankets on it, and various things that are connected with horse riding, such as my old spurs that I used to use in Montana. I got these as a present from an old cowboy called Eldon. So having used them in Montana, they this is the stirrup. This was made by Guangdrup in Switzerland. This is not old, but it's a newly made stirrup. These will hang from the saddle. These Garuda heads here are temporary. They're going to be made in bone eventually. But
and what's behind this care and attention to detail and specificity of these various objects that you're showing?
Terminal obsession. This is really the attention to detail. Yes, it's very important. It's this is the creation of an environment that holds the lineage that can be inspiring to people in the future. People in the present also, but it's being developed as a symbol of the lineage, so it will contain all the many different aspects of the lineage, so that anyone entering this place will get a sense of the lineage. So our shrine hall will look different from other shrine halls of other lineages. It's got many parts to it, really. The stripes on the walls, for example, are stripes. This colour scheme was devised by Dudjom Rinpoche's Tanka painter, Ergin Topgyal, who came to the West with him. And it was painted in London at Dudjom Rinpoche's centre, Ergin Churling. It was also painted in his Paris centre. Both centres were appropriated, I won't go into that, and they vanished. And now we're the only ones who keep up this colour scheme. I asked Namgyé Dawa Rinpoche about it. He's the son of Shenpen Dawa Rinpoche, who was the other son of Dudjom Rinpoche. And I said, have you ever seen this pattern? He said, no, I've never seen this. And we've asked various Dudjom lamas if they've ever seen this pattern before. And no one's ever seen it. So it seems only to have existed in London and Paris. We have photographs of those old shrines, or at least of the London shrine room, but nowhere else. So we've maintained that, and it's always been, it's been one of those things you can actually just paint a room with these colours and have nothing else in it, and it functions. That it has a quality and ambience. At the moment, this shrine room is rather cluttered. It won't end up looking cluttered. Once the shrine cabinets go in, it'll appear far more simple. Yeah.
And is it part of the practice for your students also to care for or attend to sacred objects? For example, would they begin a collection of items like this, their own personal collection, or is that something that extends as a teaching method, I suppose, to your students?
Yes, well, everyone who can, everyone who has a house with a spare room will probably create a shrine room. And they will evolve them as far as their enthusiasm takes them. we have an amazing number of craftspeople in our lineage, and so people are making things all the time, you know, for their own shrines and for the shrine here.
It carries through into the whole of your life, though, really, the attention to detail, doesn't it? Because if you're creating anything in your life, I mean, we hold that anybody can be an artist in whatever field. It doesn't have to be the field of painting, music. Whatever you're doing is an art form, a creative process, and you can only really create beauty if you have that sense of attention to detail, to do your utmost to make it how you want it, and to go out of your way. And you follow a path, you just go further and further down the path. You might not even have an idea of what that path's going to be in the beginning, how detailed it's going to be, or what might lead to what, but it's just natural obsession.
And that,
we use that as a positive term.
And that, you know, that extends to one's relationship with other human beings, attention to detail, that one's aware of other people as ongoing artistic projects in themselves. And so one pays attention to how other people dress, how one communicates with them in terms of their appearance, and what arrangement one makes with other people. You know, the obsession with detail goes into caring for other people. We once had I remember Yeshe's 50th birthday in New York, where someone had the idea that we'd all come dressed as Yeshe, including the men. So we all had curly wigs, and we all had various balloons up our jumpers, and it was hysterical. It was very funny, and she really appreciated it. You know, the amount of trouble everyone went to look like Yeshe. You know, it was very funny.
That was just a symbol of their affection for her, and it particularly applies in romantic relationship, attention to detail, because if you let things slide, then your relationship degenerates into sort of an everyday existence together, rather than being a bright and vibrant and happy thing, which extends into the future and for the sake of your children.
You know, buying a birthday present for somebody, there's a lot more involved than simply buying something. It's knowing about the person. If you want to purchase something that someone will appreciate, it doesn't have to be expensive, but if it depicts your knowledge of the person, then that is the greater part of the present. That's very important. Being a Dzogchen tradition, Dzogchen practice almost always goes hand in hand with wrathful practice. And so this here is the nascent protector shrine. It's also mixed up with purvas and other things, but eventually it will be slightly more simple than this. There's an anvil there with a chain and a hammer and a goat's horn. This is because these are connected with Damchan Ngojin Barwa Mezer, whose picture you see up here. And you'll see he has a bellows. The bellows are currently missing. They're in Sweden, being refurbished. We got hold of an ancient set of bellows from the early 19th century, which were almost irreparable, and our student Druktsal has been lavishing care on them for over a year now and has got them working again. And state of repair, and they'll be part of this. So you can see that Baromeze is holding a chain, and there's a chain here. He has a hammer in his hand, which is like, whoops. Actually, there was no need to pick that one up. There being one here. This is the hammer of Dorje Legpa. This is interesting in itself because on the advice of Dudjom Rinpoche, we were looking at the connections between Dorje Legpa and Thor. So we thought, well, if there's to be a hammer here, it needs to be somewhat reflective of that, and we had to go into a lot of research, because if you Google Thor's hammer, you get what you get in the comics. If you look a bit further, you can get Victorian illustrations where they're covered with filigree and are obviously not a thing a blacksmith would ever use. So we weren't really finding what we wanted to find. And then one of our students was in Helsinki Museum and found, as part of an exhibit, roughly 20 Stone Age hammerheads that are exactly this shape. So we took pictures and we just had this made. I mean, the original hammerheads were stone. This is iron, but it's a remarkable shape. It reminded me immediately of something from a science fiction movie, the alien spacecraft. And you think, this for a Stone Age shape, it's got an undercut here, which is, I don't know why they should have made it with this undercut. And it's a beautiful object. And you think, well, this was just a tool. Why is it such a streamlined shape? It's amazing. But so as soon as we saw it, we thought, this is the hammerhead. This is it. So we gave one to Tukudakpa, who's a Nyingma Lama in Finland. He loves it. He really likes this shape too. So it obviously works for more than us. And it's got the 9-pronged Vajra terminal on the end that is typical of the ones we use. It's a Rothfull 9-prong. It has a little skull at the base of each prong. As you were. So we've made a lot of these things ourselves. This style of Vajra goes back to the first spread. I found a set in Boda back in 1990, and they were going for $7,000. And it was a sad day. I was looking at them thinking, there's no way I can even think about this. So I said to the gentleman, would you mind if I drew these? He said, oh, sure, you can draw them. And so I said, I'll go and fetch some pencil and paper or whatever. He said, no, you can take them away with you. Oh, it's just lovely that somebody trusted me with that. So I took them back to the hotel room, I drew them, and eventually we had them made, the bell and the Vajra in this old style. So this is highly unusual now, but most of our students have got bells and Vajras now in that old style. And then generally there are all sorts of weapons here. The extremely ancient and rare Tibetan air gun. So it's basically just anything that anybody has that they could be. Weapons are there. The weapons destroy aggression, obsession, and indifference.
Do you, when you, in your tradition, your lineage, do you do things like prostrating when you enter the shrine room and other sorts of activities like that?
No, we don't do that. We do engage in prostration if there's an empowerment, and all our students are taught how to perform prostrations, what the visualization is, so that when they go to the East they can perform prostrations. But we tend to not go into those outer forms quite as much. We have the water offering bowls, and we have all the other traditional things, but we don't use them every day. So a lot of those outer forms of practice we use on occasions such as the ordination. For an ordination retreat or any group retreat, then we use the water offerings, you know, as well as the milk and tea offerings and all the different. So we maintain those, but they're not used on an everyday basis.
Happy birthday.
Thank you very much. 70.
Yeah.
What a thing.
So happy coincidence that I'm here on your birthday.
Oh, indeed. Well, you're most welcome.
Thank you. Yeah. Do you have any birthday reflections?
Not really, no, apart from the fact that it doesn't seem much different to being 50, which is good news for some, of course, who are younger, but yes, one doesn't imagine one's ever going to get to that age, but I suppose time's running out, though. That's one thing that occurs to me in terms of the many things there are to do, and I'm aware that, well, maybe I've got 20 years perhaps. So then I look back at the last 20 years and think, whoa, maybe I should have done more then.
Yeah.
So that's always there. But other than that, it feels fine.
Yeah, well, 70 suits you.
Mm. I actually never thought we'd ever get a center. You know, that seemed impossible at one time. I mean, when I was first teaching, we used to call ourselves the Tibetan Tantric Periphery, because we didn't have a center. So we established everything around not having a center, and for a while it worked, but then the prices of venues rose sharply, and it became an incredible drain, having to pay places to hold retreats there, and an incredible amount of labor went into making the place, look a little bit like a retreat center for the time we were there, which meant schlepping an inordinate number of suitcases around.
And Drala Jong, what's behind that name?
Well, Drala is the practice of relating to the natural world. Drala is the sentience of everything. There are different views on that. Some Buddhist lineages hold that there's a difference between sentience and non-sentience. In terms of Dzogchen, particularly in our lineage, there's a teaching of the 9 skies, which would get a little bit technical to describe, but in terms of Nimanaka, Sambhogakaya, Dharmakaya, and then Dharmakaya, Dharmadhatu, and Dharmata, if you know those terms. If you imagine those in a grid of 9 boxes, 3 up the side, 3 along the top, that leaves another 4 spaces. And those spaces are filled with, Dharmata is the emptiness of everything. So that includes sentience and apparent non-sentience. Those other 4 boxes then are areas of apparent non-sentience that are actually sentient. So from that point of view, everything is sentient. So Drala, which is spelt in different ways according to tradition, we know 3 different spellings. Ours is Zgra Bla, if we were to spell it out, S-G-R-A. The Drala that Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche talked about was, instead of S-Gra, it was D-Gra, which has the meaning of warrior. So it has a slightly different meaning, but when he talks about it, there's a lot of overlap. And then a Tung Rinpoche in Bhutan has a 3rd spelling, which is halfway between ours and Trungpa Rinpoche's. The Drala that Trungpa Rinpoche talks about is the most common spelling. So Drala involves being out in nature, although it could be anywhere. You know, it's not that a city is devoid of Drala, it's just more easily accessible through the natural world. So Kunzang Dorje Rinpoche, we asked him to name our center, and he basically said, no, you should name it. So I named it, and he said, good. That's a good name, and so that was it. Jong means valley, so the valley of Drala, and this is a valley, so it worked quite well. It's also more pronounceable than many Tibetan names. Mm-hmm.
And we wanted it to be in Wales, didn't we? Because we live in Wales. We've lived in Wales all our adult lives, although we don't live here. And the Welsh countryside lends itself to these sort of practices. And it was really the fact that this beautiful courtyard and farmhouse is nestled into the land as we have it. And it's an interesting mix of land, which you'll see when we take you round. It's, we have the pasture, which is relatively flat, and we're sort of nestled halfway down a hill, and then we have this woodland, which is fairly steep and a little bit wild, and it has pathways through it. So it really lends itself to our particular style of practice. The majority of Dzogchen practices are better practiced outside. So we think of the land around Drala Jong as being the outside shrine room, the outer shrine room, and then there's also the inner shrine room. So the land is from the perspective of Drala, it's realised phenomena in the same way that we are. The Dzogchen view, we're beginninglessly realised, so is the land beginninglessly pure. So I think it was the land plus the whole building, the way that they worked together, that really sold us on this place. Although it's currently smaller than we would wish. We need more residential accommodation to hold larger retreats when the weather is not so clement for camping.
Yes, well, you just had 40 people or so here for your birthday, didn't you?
Well, for the celebration, I mean, for the ordination, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then that just ran into the birthday.
And that's a lot of camping.
It is, yeah.
Yeah. So what do you mean when you say that the land of Wales is particularly conducive for these sorts of practices?
Well, it is primarily a rural. It's a beautiful country because it has so much variation. I mean, here it's quite undulating, so you get you get a different view from every aspect. You've got the horizon in different places all the time, and we're also actually quite close to the sea. We're 20 minutes drive from the sea, so there are many practices that we can engage in that involve gazing at the ocean and gazing at the sky. And Wales is near to where we live in Wales, so we have a Sangha that's spread throughout the world, really, America, Scandinavia and Europe. So ideally we would have a centre in every place where we have a group of students, but obviously that's ridiculously impractical. So we wanted a centre that was close enough to us that we could drive here easily, and Wales lends itself because we live here.
Yeah, and are there particular places around here that are good for certain practices? On Drala Jong, I mean, this is a good place for Shiné, or this is the place for sky gazing. Do you have those kind of locations already staked out?
No, I think that would be for individuals to find those places themselves, because the practice of Drala is quite personal to you. It's your own personal perception in relation to your surroundings. So to designate certain areas as good for this and good for that, that wouldn't really function.
One of the wonderful things, of course, for Drala here is we have a particular part of the woodland that's 500 years old, hasn't been touched, you know, and so that's really rather remarkable in itself, you know.
Yeah, that is unusual, actually.
Yes, it is designated as ancient woodland, which means it's had trees growing on it since the 1600s. So, and the trees show particular aspects of that, like they have the epiphytes growing on them, the oak trees, and there are certain plants that are signs that it was an ancient woodland. We've had a survey of the land done by the Woodland Trust in Wales. They've divided the area up into, and they've particularly designated this particular part as ancient woodland. And that's very much under threat everywhere in the whole of the UK, and particularly in Wales. There's a lot of pressure on these areas of land. So
for development.
Yes, yes. So we particularly want to. We're visitors to this land. We're only here transiently. We want to establish it for the people in the future. I mean, we're planting trees now. They're not really for us because we won't see them come to fruition. The oaks that we plant, we won't see them, you know, in hundreds of years. So it's we want to do our best for the land whilst we are transiently here, and increase the biodiversity in view of the climate challenges that we're facing currently.
Yeah. And you yourselves don't live here, but Métsal, Wangmo and Jagyür Dorje do. And who are they?
They're our students. They also have their own students. But they were at a point in life where, they had to move because their house had to be sold because Métsal's mother had died and the house had to be shared between her and her sister, and so they had to leave that house then when her mother died, and so, you know, this was available then because we needed caretakers, so they moved here, which is very nice because it's, everything works out very well in that way. I mean, it's not been massively comfortable for them because, the place is being worked on and will continue to be worked on, and they're a little cramped at the moment, but when we start working on the place, it'll improve for them. But they've been extremely cheerful about it.
How long have they been your students?
Jagyür's just had his, is it 50th birthday, and we've known him since he was 18.
Yeah.
Métsal not quite so long as that, no. But maybe.
But last century, anyway. Sometimes.
Last century.
They've also had to deal with, when you move into a new place. This place is quite complicated. It has the solar heating panels. It has water from a spring via a purifier. When you live rurally, you often get power cuts, and we've also been subject to flooding because of the nature of the watercourse through the property. So they've had to deal with all of that very much on their own, because during the pandemic, nobody could come here really. So they had some very uncomfortable episodes while they were up all night trying to keep the storm drain.
We have some film footage of Jagyür scooping out stuff from the stream to stop this whole area flooding at about 2 a.m, you know, so that...
So they've had some adventures here. Well, we've all had some adventures here.
You could have a pair of slippers if you want. Oh, you're following me now here to our part of the house, where Métsal is probably preparing. My love, we're coming in now into a bit of the house. Me and Steve.
Oh, are you?
Yes, I think he is coming in here. Most welcome.
So this is your accommodation.
This is our accommodation, yes, indeed.
You're quite a bibliophile when it comes to
Yeah, nice.
these topics. Are these your books?
Yes, this is our personal
Yes, this
library.
is our sort of, there's the library in the house, obviously, but these are our, we had this when we lived at Jagyür and before we moved here, and it keeps getting bigger, as libraries do. But we do lend them out to people too, although they don't always come back when you do that.
Book of Borrowing.
Yeah, we had the book of borrowing. So yeah, when we moved from a very big, well, yes, compared to this, a very big house in Gloucestershire that I'd been living in that I bought with my parents. But then after they died, we sold that, and so we moved from that to here. So we had to. We went from having a lot of space to fit things into 2 rooms, really. So we've had to go for the library in the hallway.
And we might extend it a little bit as well.
Yeah, it's going to keep going up, yeah, along with the cobwebs. This is our bedroom. Sure, everyone wants to see that, but and again, there wasn't a lot of. We had to kind of go up the wall with shelving. We don't have a lot of storage, so.
It's a nice photo.
That was in Bhutan, actually. One of the pilgrims took that. In fact, in Bhutan, I remember it well. One breakfast, and then we have. I don't know if we go this way first. We have. Obviously, this is straight through into the shrine room, shrine hall. But it's the kitchen we use at the moment. This is my office. This is where you see me sometimes sitting. And this is our bathroom. And then we have a living room, which also, when we have retreats, sometimes people stay in too. So this is our living room, which has a nice view out onto the old vegetable garden.
You can see it's got a bit of a tiger leopard theme.
Yeah.
There's definitely a tiger theme.
Yeah. That's Métsal's favourite.
I've always loved tigers since I was very young, and in fact I've got quite a few pictures that I still have that I had from when I was maybe 10 or 11 or something, of tigers. It wasn't until I was much older that I found out I was born in the year of the tiger as well, in the Chinese and Tibetan.
Which element? Which element?
Wood, I am. So, which is what this year is, of course. So I'm 60 this year. It's my wood tiger year.
I'm curious actually about your...
Sorry, water tiger, not wood. I was just thinking about wood with something else. Water tiger. You're fire tiger, aren't you? That's it. That's why I was thinking about wood. Yeah, no, it's water tiger. Yes, curious about...
what it's been like here. And you moved here, 3 years ago?
Yeah, 2019 in the autumn. Yeah.
2.5, nearly 3.
Well, it was very peaceful during the lockdown, because lockdown happened almost straight away, or like after 3 months. And then we were very kind of fortunate to stay in a place like this during that time.
Yeah, so we thought we would be inundated with other Sangha and people as soon as we moved here, but actually from that February, from the Losar of that year, then we didn't have anyone here really for most of a year.
For a year and a half, a year and a half.
Really, yeah, it was beautiful. I didn't go out. I didn't leave Drala Jong actually for 9 months or something, did I? Jagyür did. So yeah, it was beautiful. It's a very nice place to be. It's endless work to do, of course. So that's the we're always looking around and thinking, I can't sit down really because I've got to do that. So there's always lots to do. But there's always lots to do anyhow. Even if we weren't here, there'd be other things.
Do you have a daily routine of some sort? I'm wondering if you have a formal, for example, practice period, and then you work from certain hours or so. Do you have some sort of routine like that?
Yeah, we do. We have a slightly variable routine because I'm also going to Bristol, to Arrowling, to teach there in a week. But when we're here, we're not. We haven't got people staying, or we haven't got to go somewhere else. Then we usually try and do, most often we have 3 or 4 practice sessions during the day, so usually one first thing in the morning. And there's always one last thing at night. And then what happens in the bit in between varies depending on what else we've got to do. But when we can, we do. So we try and put in days of retreat, more solitary retreat, where we would have practice all day, but it's all practice anyhow. So whether we're strimming the estate or mending the roof or doing whatever, it's all practice.
Mm-hmm. And when you're doing the formal practice, what does that consist of?
That varies as well, depending on, for both of us, on what we're practicing. And always silent sitting, so always 4 Naljol practice, but then we have many practices that are very easy to engage with outdoors. So
we also have the kind of usual tantric practices, mantra practice, visualizations, and also
Lama Naljol.
Different ritual practices like mountain smoke offering, sung offering. And also on special days we do Tsokolo here in the shrine room, and then also the online. That's led by Ngakchang Rinpoche and Khandro Déchen online, and we can take part in the shrine room here. And that's.
Do you have any favourite spaces outside to do your practices?
Yes, we both have a few. There's a few, not just one, but there's a few which we'll show you this afternoon. Yeah, there's some great places. Kind of depending a bit on what practice you're feeling like, because there are some that have got water there. Great with some of the Semzin practices involve listening to streams, and there is a place that's really good for sky gazing. It's all good for sky gazing, but there's a bit at the top of the field where you've got a really great view.
And also because we have the woods and the fields, it's nice to go out also and practice chud in the evenings or at night. So that's in the woods. That's good as well.
Cool. Were any of your students ordained in this recent ordination retreat? There were 4 of them, weren't there, in total? Were any of those yours?
Yes, two of them actually. Yes, Rangbar and Puntsok. And then the other 2 were a couple. They were Miro and Izzat, now Rinzin and Drudur. And they're Rinpoche and Khandro Déchen students of the couple. So the two men were our students.
How long have they been studying with you?
Around 7 years.
Yes, actually, still quite quick. I mean, we've got students that have been studying with us a lot longer, but both of these 2 were very keen and enthusiastic and fulfilled all the ordination requirements and have been working really hard the last 3 or 4 years. So pass all their exams and fulfill the mantra. practice requirements. Yeah, so they were. I don't know what's driving them to be so keen. I think Phuntsog has been a practitioner in other traditions for I think he's about 62, isn't he? But he's been a Buddhist practitioner in other traditions since his early 20s, I think. So he's had a lot of practice experience. So I think when he arrived in the Aroteer and just felt completely at home, I think he was very clear he was going to go for it very quickly. He really wanted to do that. And Rangbar is young and enthusiastic, and also he's done a lot of physical practices elsewhere. So he's done a lot of martial art and Zen practice before. So equally, he was someone who, once he decided that this was where he wanted to continue with practice, he's gone really quickly with all the commitments.
And it's nice because one of them, Phuntsog, he took ordination as a Nakpa, and Rangbar took ordination as a Naljorpa, which is more or less the same ordination, but the robes looks a little bit different. And they tend to also focus on different practices, like the Nakpas tend to focus more both on silent sitting, but more on mantra and tantric practices and rituals, while the Naljorpas tends to focus more on physical exercises, the yogas. Yeah.
But actually, then there's someone like Nakma Sang-gyé, whose main practice is the physical practices, and she's a Nakma, so it confuses things. Yeah. But yeah, that's really nice that with one of each, because the whole point of having those two streams of ordination is just to keep them going, really. Like the whole point of why we wear a lot of the things we wear and do a lot of the things we do is to keep those traditions extant and visible.
It goes back to this commitment that I think you've talked to Ngakchang Rinpoche and Khandro Déchen about before, to Dudjom Rinpoche and Kunzang Dorje Rinpoche, to keep the Ngakchang Rinpoche alive in the West. So it's nice to kind of keep that tradition, grow it.
Do you know, in respect to those two ordinations, did they both come through Kunzang Dorje Rinpoche?
No, they actually come, from within the Aroteer, but Kungchen Arolingma, who received the Aroteer, she had two disciples who held both those, the Nakpa ordination and the Naljorma ordination. And Kungchen Arolingma, she was a Ngakchang Rinpoche. She wore long hair and a white skirt, but she hadn't taken those particular vows because she was a Dzogchen yogini. And then you don't really take those vows. So she asked those two disciples to make those ordinations available for the other practitioners within the Arogar, where they used to stay. And she also then adapted the robes slightly. But it's the you can see, maybe not so good on this picture, but she's wearing the Nakpa robes.
So it's going to be usually a red.
Yeah, and I'm wearing a
blue
top. We can take some nice pictures. Show the. No, this will fall off then. So yeah.
But Rinpoche took the ordination that he was given was the Nakpa. So he was Nakpa Chogyam. That was from Dudjom Rinpoche.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Khandro Déchen, she is Naljorma. So it's nice. It's nice that they have both, and when they give it, that's very nice.
One day the phone went and it was Chimé Rigdzin Rinpoche said, I'm having a picnic on this date. I want you to make good weather. So I said to him, Rinpoche, I'm not a weather maker. Oh yeah, you say this and that, and I said, but anyway, you making good weather. So the day came and I spent the day practicing. I thought that's about all I can do. I did some practice with the elements. It had nothing to do with weather making at all, and I thought, well, I can't do anything else. You know? I never learned that, so then it's all forgotten. He doesn't get back to me as to whether it rained or not, and I thought, well, I'm not going to inquire. He'll either let me know or he won't. So then I'm with him in Frankfurt. I just happened to be passing through on my way back from Austria, and I knew he'd be there, so I stopped in on him because my mother was also there at the time. And so I visited some relatives, visited with him, and then the lady who ran the Frankfurt Ring wanted me to be with him to interpret, not translate what he was saying, but to put it into a form that people could understand. So I was there with him, and he wanted me to sing 7-line song. And so I did. I used the chudram on that occasion. He'd not heard that version before. And so he said, "Where is this coming from?" And I made the mistake of wanting to gloss over the fact that it was from the Terma, because I didn't really want to get into all that on that occasion. I mean, he knew about it anyway, but so I just, it came to me, Rinpoche. And so I said, "Me," he says, I, big ego, you know, me. And so he then got the entire audience, I don't know how many there were, over 100 people. Oh, wow. And people had to vote on whether Ngakpa Chogyam had big ego or not. And some thought yes, some thought no, some said they didn't know why they were being asked and what did this have to do with Tibetan medicine anyway. And one fellow said that they thought it was disgraceful that I was being humiliated in this way, and what did I feel about it? And I said, Chimé Rigdzin Rinpoche is my teacher. If he wants to humiliate me, it's fine with me. Well, if that's how you feel, you deserve it. And I thought, all right, thank you. Next question. The whole thing was kind of absurd. And once they were all in a state of clamour, he silenced them and said, "Well, big ego, little ego." Not caring, he said, "He big weather maker. I ask him to make good weather, he makes good weather. Now what do you say?" Then some of them walked out, and it was one of those situations that only he could create, you know, that just didn't know what was going to happen next. And so that was that. Apparently they had good weather that day, but it had nothing to do with me. And so, and it was one of those occasions where afterwards I thought, you know, did you plan this all along? Because it would have been like him to have just thought, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to have all this lead up to a situation. Because he was famous for the long-range choreography of events. So that was just one of the extraordinary manifestations of that.
Khandro mangbengo gegijesu ladrunki shingiro Jesus Guru Amasiri Agyan yogi nunchansam pamage sadong bolaya sanchaging madrumye pamajum neshe sudrak Kordu Khandro mangbengo Ying'khor kegi Jesu dan drunki Shingiro chir Jesu sol Guru Brahmasere
So, Namkar Ate means sky direct. Namka means sky, Arte means direct. Theoretically, you find a blue sky, rare in Wales. We have a grey sky here, so maybe Tinpa Ate, cloud direct. But whatever the colour of sky, the practice is the same. With most of the Dzogchen silent sitting practices, one has the eyes open and one needs to train in having the eyes open. When the practice is inside a room, one focuses on the finger held at arm's length, or a foot further if possible. One focuses on the finger, takes the finger away. One brings the finger back to see if it's still in focus. Now, it's not actually important where the focus is, as long as the focus is in space. We say focusing in space rather than being out of focus, because the whole idea of out of focus is based on the idea that there is an object. So if there is no object, that is not actually out of focus, it's simply focusing in space. So one will employ that in a room, in a shrine hall or wherever. So this is quite a useful way of training the gaze, to hold the finger up and focus on it and try to keep it at that one point for a while. Once one has achieved success at doing that, one can forget about it. With Namka Ate, however, one finds an uninterrupted view of the sky, and one sits with one's hands on one's knees, and one opens the eyes wide, and one simply focuses into the sky. Because one is focusing into the sky, there is no point of focus. So one sits with one's focus in the sky for a period of time until one reaches a point at which it's possible to exchange sky and mind in terms of what is looking at what. Is mind the sky, or is sky the mind? And at this point, one has the experience of finding the presence of awareness in the dimension of the sky, in which the sky is indivisible from mind. If thoughts arise, then thoughts are no different from the clouds that arise in the sky. They arise, they dissolve. One does not detain them, neither does one object to them being there. If one happens to be disturbed by thought, or unable to experience the exchange of sky and mind, one can suddenly and unexpectedly pronounce the syllable ha. Unexpectedly, because one has received the transmission of the practice, and it can be enunciated as soon as it occurs. So it shouldn't be planned. One can simply articulate that sound spontaneously if there is no sense of the divisionless nature of sky and mind. this creates the nyam of Hedawa, in which one finds the presence of awareness. Yeah.
Is this a practice you learn from Kunzang Dorje Rinpoche or Chime Rinpoche, or does this come from the gTér?
It's gTér, but I also learned it from Kunzang Dorje Rinpoche. He taught me the Namka Ate, the 21 Semzin, many other practices. There are some slight differences in the 21 Semzin between what's regularly practiced in gTér, but mainly they're the same. They all concern finding presence of awareness in a particular context. Usually outside in the wilds, and if you look at them, you can see how they're geared up for being a wandering practitioner. You know, if you find yourself in some windy valley, there's a practice. If you find yourself lighting a fire in the evening, there's a practice, or by a river, then there's a practice. So they're very much geared to living in the wilds.
Exchanging of the mind and the space, the sky, as you were describing there, is that done then with sound? The sound
Yes.
of the wind, or
That's right.
the stream, or so? It's the same principle with different objects.
Yeah. With all the elements, you know, with water, with fire, with wind.
Just hearing and seeing, or also can you do
Touch
it
as well with water. One can actually sit in water. I imagine that was not vastly popular in Tibet, but maybe here it's more workable.
Jacuzzi.
Jacuzzi, I was thinking of the jacuzzi. That's
We have a set of 21 Senzin in 3 sets of 7, and the latter series particularly lends itself to practicing in the landscape, because often you're focusing on finding the presence of awareness in the dimension of the sound that you hear, and then another sound will occur, so you transfer your sense of hearing there. So you're constantly moving to what you hear. And also there are practices of visualizing the different planes that you can find in the landscape as you focus far away there where the hill has almost disappeared. And then you focus a bit closer and then closer, and you bring it back plane by plane. So there are all these are quite unusual practices, aren't they? But they're particularly associated with the landscape and the sounds that you hear.
Tibetan Druktra has been practicing them. His father, Khandro Rinpoche, translated them all into Chökyi for him. So, because he was interested in these practices, so he now has a set of the 21 Semzin in Chökyi, or Tibetan, in other words. That language in Bhutan is called Chökyi rather than Tibetan. It's still actually unusual to sit here thinking, oh, this is our land. Not ours in particular, but it belongs to Sangha Chödzong, and usually in such an environment it belongs to somebody else. So I haven't got used to that yet. This is very strange.
Oh, we spent 20, 30 years not having land, sitting on someone else's land practicing.
Does it feel different?
Yes. Well, I wouldn't like to say how, but it's certainly there's the daily surprise of it not being someone else's land that hasn't gone away yet. It's.
I think in terms of Drala, there's where we talked about earlier about the communication between the individual and what they see. and the communication of what they see with that individual. I think as you become more familiar with the land, you do develop a different sort of relationship with it when you see it changing through the seasons.
The practice of letting the oral attention move to different sounds is quite fascinating, because it resembles to a certain degree what happens with mind when it's scattered, when you're flitting from one thought to another, and this is delightfully similar to that, but it's the external sounds that are drawing the attention, and the attention just shifts to each new one as it happens, which has the effect of scattering conceptuality just quite naturally. If you're in a place like this where the birds are twittering, you just get sounds like that come from all directions. Then you get the plips of water on the roof here that happen as well. Or the sound of the car on the road over there that suddenly come into focus.
Do you think you'll build is there a secluded retreat cabin on the land somewhere that people can go into? Do you have that sort of thing? Someone goes into a week or month or so of secluded retreat?
Yeah, we that's an important part of the lineage. In terms of Dzogchen, we don't go in for the 3-year retreat in particular, but it's more a case of retreat being part of life. So, I mean, a period of silent sitting is a retreat. Retreat's a funny word, really. It's like a lot of the words that I used as part of Himalayan Buddhism, they actually have Christian origins, because retreat is not a translation. The Tibetan word is tsam, which means confines or parameters. So you set the parameters and you live within the parameters. This is what's given rise to strange names like semi-open retreat or open retreat, and we have to qualify the retreat, but actually tsam is just tsam. You know, if part of the tsam is that you can go shopping every day, then that's the tsam, or if you can Khandro Tenzin Dolkai used to live in continual tsam, but hers included pilgrimage, so she'd always be on the move, practicing in different places. So for us, what's important is that retreat is part of life, so that even half a day or a full day or a weekend, one can do that quite often in a year. If you're saving up for the 3 months or the month that either happens or not, you can just end up not going into retreat at all. So it's really quite important to have these short retreats that are functional in the context of a 3-part approach, where you have your daily silent sitting, which is based on your retreat experience, and then your daily silent sitting will be informed by your retreat experience. And then in addition to that, one has the practice of suspension, which is something that lasts as long as a breath. That whether you're breathing in or breathing out, you simply stop. And the practice lasts as long as you need to breathe again. And as soon as you continue to exhale or inhale, that's the end of the practice. And with that suspension, everything suspends. The breath is suspended, which is a symbol. And then vision suspends, hearing suspends, all the senses suspend. And the value of that is that it's never claustrophobic because it's too short. And there's also a possibility for entering into that practice many times a day, you know, at a traffic light. You have enough time to practice suspension. Or when you stop the car before you get out of it, you can practice it just many times. And if you're practicing that, as well as your daily silent sitting, as well as occasional retreat, be it a day or a weekend, then your practice can really advance. So that's more or less how it's presented to people, as how to incorporate practice into daily life. But the practice of suspension is particularly important. I think that sometimes people who practice even for an hour a day, who regard it as, well, that's the practice over for the day, now I can just go and live like everybody else, that can be problematic. So the practice of suspension enables you to take the sense of being a practitioner throughout the day. You never leave it behind. It's always there as a possibility. And that makes a great deal of difference, even if it's for such short periods of time.
What are the marks of an advancing practice?
Loss of knee-jerk responses, loss of sensitivity in the unpleasant sense of the word, loss of taking offence. Some people are professional offence takers. It's extraordinary. So that disappears.
And being insensitive yourself.
Yes. But really, not particularly that you don't feel angry anymore, but that you're not driven by it to bark at somebody. You can simply notice. And there's no instant impulsion to shout or bark or whatever. That's the main thing, really.
Yeah, and being circumspect, being able to see around a situation with a degree of spaciousness rather than, as you said, a knee-jerk, immediate explosion of emotion.
I think the time that I had to work with it the most was in Dehradun. I was quite young at the time, but I stayed in the Nyingma Gompa at Dehradun, and there were two dogs there. There was what I envisaged as a big dog and a small dog. And trying to get to sleep, the big dog would make this sound, and then the little dog would go, ar, 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 ar. And there was something entirely infuriating about that sleep was impossible while that little dog was doing that. Then eventually the little dog would stop, and I'd think, I hope I can get to sleep before it starts. Arr! Arr, 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 and it would start again. And I think that's maybe one of the times in my life when I've been most disappointed in myself about getting angry. Because I thought, where's the machine gun? Where's the flamethrower? And I thought, you've got to get over this. This is ridiculous. You know, they're just dogs. You know, if you're tired enough, you just fall asleep. Whose fault is it? My fault. Realizing that everything is my fault is helpful. But that stops anyway. Having to blame other people for everything. You know, if it wasn't for you, it would all be all right. If it wasn't for this happening, it would all be all right. I'd be happy if it wasn't for this, for that, for the other. So when you get some advance in practice, then it suddenly becomes the situation. And you don't have to respond to that situation apart from in a kindly manner. or a helpful manner. So I think that if anybody wants to judge their practice, they have to look at whether they still have knee-jerk responses, and if they do, then their practice hasn't gone very far. That's not to say that when you hit the knee, that's still going to happen, that kind of knee-jerk response, but the emotional ones disappear.
Very much still alive, not dead.
Yeah. Why, these days I can even endure ABBA. That's a very advanced.
It was at a time when Dungse Trinley Rinpoche was visiting, and Gary was appointed to be his gopher, you know. And Dungse Trinley Rinpoche asked him if he would come out on his morning walk with him. And apparently on the first walk through the woods, Dungse Trinley Rinpoche said, "The trees on my land are better than the trees on Tatsum Rinpoche's land." That's all he said for the entire walk. The next day they went out again. He said, "The trees on Tatsum Rinpoche's land are just as good as the trees on my land." Then on the third day they went out, he said, "The trees on Tatsum Rinpoche's land are better than the trees on my land." And that was all that was ever discussed. Now, why I find this story delightful, I'm unable to explain, as I think Gary was unable to explain why he found it delightful as well. But, I was teaching on Jersey once, and the story about New Jersey is his average age 70, average rank lieutenant colonel, and someone had invited me there to give a teaching on silent sitting, so I did. And I'd occasionally let out this hut. And eventually somebody asks me about it, but it's interesting to see how long people will take to ask what it's all about. And finally, this lady, who was apparently in her 90s, said, "Young man, that sound you make, is it involuntary?" I always remember her. She was delightful. She said, no, it's deliberate, isn't it?
Do you often dream of Dudjom Rinpoche?
Not often. No, they're rare, but they're what is interesting about them is that I can't say what language he's speaking. I won't say it's English. All I can say is that I understand. But waking up afterwards, I can always hear the sound of his voice. You know, if there's something on Facebook where someone's got a recording of him, I know it's him immediately. It's I can tell him from any other lama in his speech. The extraordinary thing about Dudjom Rinpoche is that even though he died in 1987, people still have visions of him. Ken Dzogchen in particular, you know, who never even met him, has visions of him. And recently many people have been making statues of him. And since this one was made of Dudjom Rinpoche with the lifelike face, there's been one made of Chatra Rinpoche. There are all sorts of lamas of now. There are these lifelike statues. right down to glasses, spectacles, the whole thing. So I think some of them have been training in, I'm not sure, it's Japan or somewhere where there's this art almost like Madame Tussauds or something, that they're really going for lifelike statues.
The Ying'khor we can practice outside, because that's really lovely to practice. So is Kum Nye, but it's the grass is wet.
You've been interviewed before, haven't you, on the podcast?
Yes.
And of course that was over Zoom. And now you're here at Drala Jong. And in that interview we discussed a little bit briefly your specialism, your favourite practice, the Kum Nye. What could you say about that, and why is it your favourite practice?
I've been practicing for about 25 years, and I was a dancer, and I just love movement. And the further I go with it, the more I realise how important it is, firstly, to silent sitting practice and just changing everything, the relationship to that. So I think it makes silent sitting practice much more, what's the word? It works. So it helps you, it stops thought very quickly. And so if you're struggling with Shiné, then Kum Nye just is such a support for that. And then the other thing is I've helped people with, that suffering from injuries to come back. And it just seems like there's so many different things and applications. If we're not talking about the Buddhist aspect, but we're just talking about exercise. I was teaching Pilates and just gave up teaching Pilates because I just think it's such a good exercise system.
Mm-hmm. So. Great, and you've kindly offered to show me some movements.
Well, first of all, there's the aspects of, we won't do the 4 Da, but there's the 4 Da where you hold your eyes in a particular way and your tongue is suspended. We won't worry about that too much today, but when people come to the class, we practice just that. And then we have this, everything is to massage the Tsa, which are all in these places between the fingers. So the hands are usually open like this, so we'll be practicing that. And some limbs are locked and other limbs are moving. And then we have the most important thing, which is the Na-core, Na being nose, core being circle. And so we do tiny nose circles, and that massages the Tsa as well, and it's beautifully disorienting. So a lot of them are like, this. So, but I thought the first one is just very easy. It's called Garuda playing in the clouds. They all have names of the animals of the 5 elements. And it's a lovely one for warming up.
All right.
All right. Not at all. So this is called Garuda playing in the clouds. And another reason I love this, you can go as slow as you like or as fast as you like. Eventually it's supposed to be sort of 1 second per movement. But we start with our hands here with our fingers splayed. And then you keep this leg locked, which is rather difficult, but all right. And then we just kind of lean forward. And as you lean forward, you reach your hands out, make a circle with them, and then come back in. And you just keep tap here. Then you're going to go to the back. So you turn your body to the side, and you do the same. Swooping and tap, and then you swoop to the side and tap. Or actually bring it down, and then you change legs. So trying to keep this supporting leg straight, back, side. So it's a beautiful one to warm up. And if you've got sort of injuries where you can't jump, it's really nice. You get a higher heart rate, but it doesn't hurt your body. How are you doing? And then eventually, with the 1 second I meant, it's really like you can be really... but of course things then go, so it's better to just go back to being, but you can see how it can be quite athletic eventually when you get used to it. So we have no Na-core here. We're just facing the front the whole time. Yeah? Mm-hmm. Good. So there's one that's for shoulders and neck, which is quite nice, where we're kneeling. Okay. Perhaps we can face each other, or be like this. So what you want ideally with this, if you've got bad knees, you don't do this at all, or a bad neck. But we're going to we have our feet flat like this, and if people can't do that, they have their toes bent. And then we're stand up on our knees, but you want to be, this is an equilateral triangle. So yes, perfect. The length of this from your hip to your knee is the same here, which means you're on the sides of your knee, so it's a little bit uncomfortable. People can put a sheepskin or something. Once again, splayed fingers. And we bring our elbows as far forward, lovely, as we can. And then we just lift our elbows up, back, and down. And you keep your fingers on your waist. And that's exactly it. And you keep them splayed, you're a natural. And then we have a slight nose circle, Ngakchang, with this. So you can orient your nose to one. So if I think of circling with the right arm, and this circle's a little, so I'm just doing a tiny Ngakchang. Yeah. And what we do with this is we do 14 slow, going front, back, front, up, back, front, up, back. So you can do a little Ngakchang if you want to, or not if you don't. So here I would be keeping my eyes fixed in my head, but that's a whole other thing. Nice. And then when we've done 14, which we've just done, you make them a little bit faster. Trying to still bring the arms as far forward as you can. And then when you've done as many as you decide to do, there's all the set numbers in the book, you just freeze, and then you go the other way. So you go back and you reverse the Ngakchang. Yeah. And we do 14 slow. And then 7 fast, we'll do 21. Great. So then after that, after each exercise, you go into the meditation posture. So we'll just do that, usually for 3 times as long as it took to do the exercise. But so we've got our legs just enough apart that your thighs aren't touching. And then you've got your arms not high, but just above a T, and your fingers are still splayed. And then you'd be practicing the 4 Da, so your eyes are wide open, unmoving, tongue suspended, and eyes are focused in space. And here's where the meditation happens. So we've massaged the Tsal system, and here we would just lie and find presence of awareness in the dimension of the sensation. And then after you practice enough, you can experience zapnyams, which are different to normal nyams. I think we spoke about that. And then from zapnyams you can experience Rigpa. So we won't stay there, but that gives you an idea. Mm-hmm. And then we could try something a little bit more active, going into Prowling Tiger. I love this one. So you can get really fit doing this. So here, I'll show it to you first perhaps, because it's a little bit... So you've got your arms, it's a little bit like a plank, but you want to be a little bit more up and over your arms. And then your feet are together on your toes. And I'm going to jump around. So the way to start this exercise is just to practice stepping. And you see I turn my butt, to go with it. My fingers are splayed on the floor. And I turn my butt so that my leg can almost touch my hand. And I'm keeping this leg straight and the other leg straight as well. And then I swing this way. And then I add a little hop to that. So it looks like this. Yeah? Mm-hmm. So it's a really nice way of getting your heartbeat up fast. And so, feet together, lovely. Perfect, nice. Yep. And you're trying to keep your knees, a little bit locked, but don't be there, that's perfect. And then you can just do a little hop onto the leg when you come back. Hop, yep, beautiful. And then just let your head be down a tiny bit, your neck be a bit more relaxed. That's it. Wow, you're brilliant, Steve. We'll have to want to recruit you now. Yes, Prowling Tiger. So that one's lovely. And then you would rest again. And when you rest, you then do the exercise three times like that with 3 meditations in between. So they work really well, like a bit like high impact interval training as well, which is quite funny really. Let's try Rising Eagle. So I love this one too. So this one has a Ngakchang. So we've got our, how should we do this? We can do it with me facing here. So we've got our legs, what's called a jateb apart, which is a handspan more than hip width apart. And our hips are just going to go from side to side, but without turning. So they're just like they're on a, like the abacus or something, you know, beads. So just across like this. And then the arms are out here. So the hands, palms are, fingers are splayed again, palms are facing the sky to start. And then, even though this is a starting position, it's easier if you start here. So the lower hand is toward the hip that's out. And what we're going to do is make backward circles with our arms like this. And as we do that, we're going to take with the hips. So as the arm's lowering, it lowers toward the hip that's out. Really good for the hips, lymphatic system, if you care about that kind of thing. Beautiful for the shoulders. How's that one?
Fascinating, yeah.
So you can feel how that would be so good for lymphatic system. But let's finish without those with a lion. So this one is really fun. So I'll show you this first as well. Walking lion, this is called. So we're on our hands and our knees, and you have your feet, toes curled under, which gives you a bit more support. This is an incredible, which you'll recognize because some dancers do this and other people, it's incredible core exercise if you do it properly. And we extend the right arm without crunching, and we extend the left foot without breaking the back, and our fingers are splayed, and then we go in opposite circles. So clockwise, this is a wonderful one for no thought. You can't do this exercise if you think. So clockwise with the arm, anti-clockwise with the leg. And then I follow, I Ngakchang in the direction that my arm is going. And then I change. I do the same thing here, clockwise with, anti-clockwise with the arm, clockwise with the leg. Or I like to think of outward circles from the middle of the body. And then the opposite of that, inward circles. Is this making sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the same here. So you would do either 3, 5, 7, 9, all the way to 111 circles, and then for each one 4 times, and then go into the meditation posture.
Okay.
We all laugh a lot when we practice this together.
I'm not sure if I can do this.
You won't be able to. Well, I'll be shocked if you can do it immediately. It's not an easy one. It's a lot of fun though, yeah.
Myself in here.
If you, for me, are you a clockwise, anti-clockwise person, or are you more? Oh, okay.
Well, I think so.
Because for me, it's almost, it feels better to just think of up, out, down, and in. You're not touching the floor though.
So that one's going like that.
Yep, perfect.
And that one's going like that.
No, one's going the other way. Up, out. That's it. And that one's going up, out. I might have told you wrong. Yes, perfect. And it doesn't even have to be that big. Yeah, really good. Very good for the butt as well, if you don't. Yeah. Nice. And then. See, you truly are natural. Beautiful. So, you know, if you keep your back from moving and you don't bend your knee, this is incredible for the core, and you can feel it in your butt, yeah? Fantastic.
Interesting, yeah.
Yeah.
Great. That's the Kum Nye.
That's the Kum Nye.
Yeah.
And there's 111 of them. At the moment we teach 35, and then soon there'll be the second series. Some of the second series will come out, so, you know, but there's ones where you just sit like this, you know, and just move. So I love this system because I could give this to a really fit person and give them a workout, or someone who's in a hospital bed, you know, so that's what I love about it. And you're still meditating, and did you notice you had no thought?
Yes, I suppose. Well, I don't notice it, which is maybe that's a good sign.
Yeah, there's kind of not a lot of space.
I didn't notice it either way.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Yeah, it's very engaging.
Great. And I can show you a Ying'khor if you like from the gTér system. So these also have names of the animals, but with that they have the elements. So you have a sort of grid. So the first one I'll show you is Earth Lion. So we're really doing earth, Maybe I'll show you Earth Line and Space Garuda will go. So with all the Gesar, it's looks a lot like Tai Chi or Qigong, but we don't, in Tai Chi, people stand, I believe, with the pelvis slightly forward. But we sit as if with the tailbone straight down, in basically in the natural curve of the back. And then we visualize a white sphere, so that's our Namana chakra, which is, or Trupakolo, or navel. And that white sphere is 4 fingers breadth around the navel, and it's half in and half out the body. It's visualized as that. And it's a sphere of white light made up of the 5 colors. So then we're just going to visualize that rising to the heart and lowering back down. And I'll just let you visualize it first and see what happens to your breath, because it usually just falls into place. So here we would also have the 4 Da, so I wouldn't catch you, so it's not so hard. So I'm, focusing in space with my eyes wide open, unmoving. This is a lot easier for practicing the 4 Da because you're not doing a nose circle, and the tongue is suspended. And then
the feet are out.
The feet can be out, yeah, you can be very deep, you can be just relaxed. The main thing is to not have tension. And then all the movements when we move are as if you're moving through water. But first of all, just see what happens with your breath when that sphere rises up to the heart and lowers back down in your time. And you can just let me know once the breath is settled.
Slowed. And inhaling, rising, exhaling, lowering.
Exactly, perfect. And then what happens, so all the movements in the Ying'khor come from the in-out. So like a pebble, so that we only move because of the body's expression of what's internally happening. In the Ying'khor, the meditation is the movement. So what happens basically is that as the sphere lifts, it lifts us under our arms, and then our elbows, and it sometimes straightens the knees a bit, and then the hands. And then as it lowers, it does the same thing. And there's this sort of feeling of resisting through water. Well, not resisting, but, moving through water. So you feel very supported, actually, with that movement through something that's allowing you to rest on it. And you just allow, here we don't ever lock any limbs because it's a martial form. So even though these are not about fighting, it still follows that not locking. Yeah, so that's that one. You can let your elbows maybe go a little bit more soft. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. And we'll make this the last one. You can practice these for much longer, but they're quite beautiful to just, if you're walking through the woods or something, to just, if one comes to your mind, or even if you're at home, you just stop, or you can practice them before you sit, or if you're distracted, you can just practice them, get up, stand up. So the last one I'll show you is called Space Garuda. So now we've gone from Earth to Space. And this one we visualize the central channel, and it's basically at that point of the little dent in the head, but if people can't find that, it's 12 fingers back from the eyebrows, and then around there people will find a little dent. And then the central channel runs, and here we're visualizing it about, as Barcha says, the size of a McDonald's straw, which is in nearly every country, or about the size of my finger. Tube, brilliant royal blue, this color, down the front of the spine to the perineum. And we're visualizing that, once again, slightly relaxed knees, and we're visualizing it, once again, you can find the breath. I think it's very good to just visualize first and really let the movement come from that if people are practicing this by themselves. And what happens here is that central channel starts to expand, and it expands down into the earth, up into the sky, in front and behind us, and to both sides. So basically, it expands all around us. And as it does that, it becomes a light blue mist. And then it coalesces back to that very brilliant royal blue central channel. And then you've probably also found that you're breathing in as it's expanding, breathing out as it's coming back.
I was doing the opposite actually. I was drawing it in with the in-breath.
So
With the out-breath.
we start with the things, try this, it might help with to have the movement. We're about, at the level of the Nirvana chakra, the hands are about 8 inches apart. You don't have to be too specific, but about there. And then as it expands, it takes our hands out. And we're inhaling light blue mist as far as it goes, and then we breathe out as it cola, and they ride back in. You'll notice I go quite deep into the knees, but no one has to do that. And then this is just in the time. They change a lot the more you practice them, with the breath getting longer and all kinds of things. Yeah, and you can just let your chest, rather than having to come in, you can just let your chest be relaxed. That's it, nice. So,
and that's Barche Dorje.
yes,
Teaching.
and Métsal Gelmo hold that lineage through Rinpoche and Déchen, yeah.
Fantastic. Wow. Thank you for the demonstration.
Thank you,
The
it was
lesson.
wonderful to
Appreciate it.
work with you. You're truly a natural.
Thank you.
The drinking song of Dudjom Rinpoche. Because some drinking companions requested it, I, the drinker, Jagyür and Dorje, sung this spontaneously. Within the supreme, self-existing skull cup of happiness are swirling oceans of shining essence tigle. Above, the 5 seed syllables appear and become the Yabyon Buddhas of the 5 elements. Flood of blessings flows from their ecstatic union. They move in great joy, melt in light, and dissolve into the spatial essence. Ah Hung. The 3 syllables rain from the dimension of space, and the precipitation manifests as Dutsi, a treasury of desirable qualities whose colour, taste, and fragrance are powerful. Ah Hung, Ha Ho Hree. Offerings multiply. Happiness arises upon perceiving the wondrous, unsurpassed Dutsi of the heroes and heroines of the world. I offer this to the pervading masters, my most kind lamas, the holders of the 6 lineages, the 3 jewels, the 3 spheres of being, peaceful, joyous, and wrathful Yirams, Momos and Bikinis, protectors of the inner tantras, Temra protectors of the treasuries of phenomena, protectors of the ground of being, the Sang-gyé Ying'khor of my body, duality and non-duality, and to the infinite purity of the phenomenal world. Ah ho, wonderful. In this way nobody becomes unhappy when drinking. Alala ho, marvellous. She su so, please drink. The Tsatsum and Buddhas drink in the space of existence. Choking on Strungmo drink with awareness. Lamas drink on their thrones. Dharma friends drink sitting in rows. Monastics drink secretly. The Ngakchang Rinpoche drink openly. Old men drink proudly. Old ladies drink smilingly. Men drink noisily. Women drink swayingly. Youth drink playfully. Girls drink laughingly. I, the Tantrika, drink happily. We drink happily without reference points to cause dissatisfaction. Because this apparitional banquet, free of referentiality, is offered to the illusory body, what we drink is a sacred feast. Anxiety is therefore unnecessary, and we remain relaxed. Because appearances are infinitely pure, discrimination is unnecessary, and we remain serene. Because self-existent wisdom is total, effort is unnecessary, and we rest with cheerful minds. The path of happiness we follow arises due to the kindness of the lamas. Alalaho, Kelpazang.
Alalaho, Kelpazang.
Kelpazang.
Kelpazang. Kelpazang. Kelpazang. Kelpazang. Kelpazang.
To perhaps explain the hand position.
This was a mudra that was evolved by Chimé Rigdzin Rinpoche for the Western wine glass. The three fingers underneath are the kusum, the three kayas. The thumb and little finger are emptiness and form. The 5 fingers around the top are the 5 elements. So that is how it's held when the recitation is proceeding. And then for toasting each other with kalpazang, which means we are happy, it's held like this, with the 3 fingers underneath in a straight line along with the one on the top, and these are the 5 elements again. It is a secure position once you get it, even though it doesn't feel like it. And then everyone clinks glasses with everyone else and says kalpazang.
Wonderful, thank you very much. Happy birthday.
Thank you. Thank you.
Many more. Most definitely. Here's to that.
Kalpazang. One of the things we tell people who have an interest in this tradition is that, you know, this is not a way of life, as Buddhism is often presented. It's not a spiritual technology, it's not necessarily a way of achieving any great state of mind. It's a religion. It's an unpopular word, which is part of the reason we use it, but if you look at it, especially as it is in the East, it has all the aspects of religion, apart from a lack of God. That's the only thing that divides it. And one of the things that always goes wrong for people is when they want something out of it for themselves that is too immediate, to be goal-oriented, you know, enlightenment. It is a big problem for people that they want to achieve exalted states rather than join a religion. So that's what we always say, this is what you're doing here, you're joining a religion. If you want to be part of something, you can be. But you need to be happy just being part of it. And then if you attain the non-dual state, well, wonderful, you know, but, you know, going for that as what you want is not always guaranteed to be useful in your life or something you're really going to be able to maintain. So there are many aspects here, you know, if you look around this place, you look at the shrine room and you look at all the work people are putting into it, you know, you're looking at something, you know, like the local church where the ladies are making these needlepoint hassocks of scenes of the local village. That has more in common with what we're doing than a lot of what we see in Western Buddhism. You know, that particularly this emphasis on trying to take Dzogchen out of Buddhism. It can be practiced on its own. That's an entirely modern idea. It never happened in Tibet. It didn't exist on its own. Anyone who ever practiced Dzogchen practiced it along with Vajrayana and with Sutra also. This is one of the things actually that Ngakchang Rinpoche stated. You know, you shouldn't look down on the lower vehicles or even see them as lower vehicles. There is just the whole spread of teaching, and you need to really to be able to access all of it. That's important, but I'm not sure how long the Dzogchen on its own is going to last as a fashion. It'll probably go on until people realize that it doesn't really lead anywhere and they give it up. But that seems to be infecting a lot of people at the moment, the idea that that's possible.
What does that look like when somebody's trying to do Dzogchen by itself in that way?
Well, to me it looks a little bit like being on the spacecraft where you've got tubes of grey nutritious paste that you eat every day, or so I was told, and it doesn't feed the whole person, and so it's not going to survive because we don't live our lives entirely in a state of spiritual intensity. Life is a spread of different emotions, different activities, and so what's required is something that feeds the whole human being. And you can only get that with something that, whether it's called a religion or not, it doesn't matter, but it looks like a religion. It has a history. It has people about whom there are stories. It has special times in the calendar of the year or in the month. It has names. It has foodstuffs, momos, for example. Momos aren't going to introduce you to the nature of mind. I'm not saying that, but if you're hungry in pursuit of the nature of mind, then there are momos, and they do play a part. There's something delightful about the spiritual culture, and without the culture, people basically starve to death, and they give it up because they don't achieve what they want to achieve. And people invariably want to achieve it too quickly.
What's the difference between what you're talking about and somebody who wants to imitate the culture of the country where the religion has come from? Is there a difference there?
That is also a problem, yes. There's nothing you can do, but there's no problem. So I met a lot of people who were born-again Tibetans when I was first in India, and I was generally reviled for finding anything interesting in Western culture. So, your Bach, Shakespeare, this is just Western trash, And I'd say, no, I don't think that's entirely accurate. So, although I may look fairly Tibetan in this, well, apart from the hat, but I've never abjured Western culture. I've always loved blues, I've always loved Baroque music, I've always loved literature. So a lot of that was thinking that Tibetan culture was better than Western culture, rather than simply different. So the religion has a certain amount of the culture in it, and I think it's useful to take enough of it to be workable for a culture in the West. With what we do here, it's not entirely Tibetan. It's, for example, the offering bowls are something that we employ only on retreats and special occasions. It's not an everyday thing, and there are many things that are not everyday in that way. So our whole mode of operation is that we take of the culture that which is supportive, and that's just not everything, So we celebrate Losar, and we take on quite a few things like that, even a little bit of Tibetan folk dance that some people learn for Losar and put that on as a celebration piece, but. And it's not the central practice, it's supportive, and we remember that it's supportive, and that's its main function. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I always like what you say about a religion, Rinpoche, about the fact that it provides something that's bigger than me. That it's... that's a very useful thing, as something that's bigger than you are.
Actually, that's the main thing. That is bigger than me. It's you belong to something, and that there are duties that go with that. If you belong to something, there are duties, and those duties are important. That it's not. Everything has to be what I decide, and that's something of a trap.
I guess the idea of blaming religion for negative actions perpetrated in the name of religion, that's why people... that word religion is a dirty word, isn't it? And we all shy away, well, we don't shy away from it, but many other people shy away from it. But in any group, it's the people that make the group. It's the people that make the religion or unmake the religion. You get abusive doctors, but you don't give up medicine. You don't give up seeking help for your physical problems. So it's always a mistake to blame the structure rather than the people who perpetrated the negative actions.
One thing that's really surprised me about being a practitioner, I was saying this to Rinpoche and Déchen a little while ago, is I never believed in community. I just thought, I'm a loner who needs community. And after sort of over 20 years of being in the Sangha, I really see the value of a good community, and how much it can really do for people. It's supportive, but it also... you're held to account, but it's amazing that there's just sort of so much support and love from people and acceptance. So I think when it's a good community, which I didn't believe, so it's similar to the religion, I thought that about community, but seeing it work well is amazing.
Why do you think it works well here?
Because of our lama's example. And the humour. I think humour is what really is, isn't it? It's just just continuing to try to be the best you can be, but not being serious about it and pious. And we're really encouraged. When I first asked if I could be an apprentice, the first thing Ngakchang Rinpoche said to me is, we just ask our apprentices to be kind and considerate to each other. And I really took that on board. And I think when everybody's accepting you for who you are, no matter how wacky that is, that transforms people. That in itself, I think, transforms people. And that we are really individuals here, aren't we?
I'm not.
Nor me. Nor you.
That's become a famous response now since the life of Brian. When anyone says we're all individuals, someone's bound to say, I'm not. That was so clever, So, which, of course, makes him the only individual there.
Yes.
What does it mean to you, Métsal and Jagyür, to belong to something bigger than yourself, to this word religion, community?
Yeah, I haven't really particularly thought about community, actually, but the belonging to something bigger, that was definitely the thing that I noticed when I became an apprentice. I felt like I was doing some interesting things in terms of spiritual practice before studying with Rinpoche and Khandro Déchen and becoming part of the Sangha. But part of me felt like I was just becoming cleverer, actually, and more able to, more skilled at self-delusion. So actually that's also what happens, and that's what happens when you have teachers, but it's also what happens when you're part of a Sangha, because you get that, you get yourself reflected back at you. And being with a group of people who are, whatever else they are, and however much they might not be the people that you would seek out to be friends with, they're all trying. And that's really, that shifts something, I think, quite profound, to spend your time with people who are really doing their best. I mean, I think everyone's doing their best, but there's a kind of concerted effort within a Sangha. So yeah, that's the. I think it's the most. Yeah, I think it's kind of the most useful thing that it provides is this something that's not me, something that's beyond me and bigger than me, because I see that as being a bit of a problem.
And for me, I think I addressed this actually in the first interview I did with you, what it was that got me into Buddhism, because I don't come from a religious background, but I started to read about Buddhism, especially yogis and meditators in caves and things. I thought this was really interesting. I found that really inspiring, and I wanted to follow in that footsteps. So for me, it was following in that tradition, and it's been like that since then.
People try too hard to escape from it, as if it could be called a religion, it was going to have a problem. But there are plenty of things that aren't called religions that have problems. You can't escape it by just avoiding the word. And then sometimes people talk about organized religions. Well, I'm not quite sure what that is, because if several people want to get together for dinner, there has to be organization there. Otherwise, they'd all end up somewhere else. So you've got to organize something. But maybe that's being too literal with the word. But
I think the more structure you have, the more it throws people up against each other. Mm-hmm. And that in itself then is a bit more uncomfortable for people, isn't it? Like having this place, it throws people together with their particular issues more than if they're not, they just come together twice a year in a hired place. Yeah. So
I think that one of the things is probably with organizations is the rules.
Yes, what is known as dogma.
Yes, or simply rules of what you're not allowed to do. Now, we have rules, but the thing about the rules is that they're all adaptable according to individual human beings. So the rule doesn't take precedence over human beings. It's a guideline. So we don't have many rules that are hard and fast. I can think of one, which is smoking. We don't take smokers. That's a hard and fast rule. But there are other rules that are always adaptable. So I think maybe organized religion, where the rules are not adaptable, is perhaps a problem for people. Maybe, I'm not sure where the Church of England stands now on divorce for its priests, for its vicars, whether divorce is allowable, whether you can marry a divorcee or not. But that's always seemed to me like it's a rule that ought to be adaptable, because there are human beings involved, and I don't quite see upsetting people's lives for the sake of a rule where someone could say, well, in this case, I'm going to allow it because there are factors here. This all comes out of watching the Grantchester mysteries. just seeing the situation and thinking, no, if I was the bishop of whatever, I'd say, all right, well, fine. So it tends to be where we come from, that we look at the people and we say, well, yes, I know you're supposed to do that and this, but in your case, because of this, that and the other, I don't see why it should be entirely necessary. Maybe that's possible because it's such a relatively small group of people, we can do that. But that's always been a principle we've applied, that there's the rule and how it functions for the individual. So maybe that makes it not like a religion, because maybe religions don't function in that way, and there are hard and fast rules. But I suppose this whole question of redefining is going to go on all the time, you know, in terms of people trying to explain what this actually is, where the word gets in the way. There are some people who shall remain nameless who are extracting the essence, and they sometimes have a following, and what occurs to me about it is, when they're gone, what are people going to do with that? When we're gone, there are many different lamas out there who know us, who our students can go to these people who will understand where they've come from, so people are not left high and dry. Because if you go out and do something that's so different, basically you're saying, I'm Jesus, I'm Muhammad, I'm one of those world religion creators. But if you're not, you're leaving people high and dry. And that's really unfair to people, to do that to them. So I mean, there's so many people out east who people could go to and say, you know, our teachers have died, would you help us? And who know who their teachers were, know their lineage, maybe not entirely, but know it enough to understand what it was. Our students have gone out to the east, and that they've shown them various things, and they've said, oh yeah, Dzogchen lineage, we know this. So it's understandable. But if it's no longer understandable, you know, when you start calling it radical Dzogchen, you think, hang on, what's, you know, that's like saying wet water or something, you know. You don't want that dry water, you want wet water. I find that whatever is attemptedly being expressed by that, I don't quite see it. You know, I don't think there's any need for describing it in that way. One of the issues around this is the way that people use language without thinking. I've known it all my life. It was when I was at school, when everyone was a Marxist. Everyone was talking about the proletariat, the bourgeoisie, and you know, you've got these buzzwords and everybody knows them, and you become one of the club by being able to use these words. And at art school, you know, everyone you didn't like was a bourgeois cretin, you know. It's you know, and it's like this, you know, organized religion. I don't want organized religion. And you think, well, what do you even mean by the term? You know, have you ever thought about it? Or what does it mean to you? And many people just use language like this without thinking about it, about what it means, implies, or whatever, or what counts as that thing.
I mean, whatever they go to as an alternative has to be organised in some way, doesn't it? And it just may be disguised in some of a New Age culture.
We should advertise a course, you know, and just not turn up and say, well, this is not organised religion. What do you expect? Did you expect anyone to be there? We're the disorganized religion, you know. That's
yeah. I'm curious about something you said earlier, kind of Déchen, that symbolism isn't always convenient, and you were referring at that time to the robes you were wearing, which got wet when we were walking through the forest.
But that's the nature of being contained by your religion, isn't it? And contained by your vows. We wear the robes when we're representing the tradition. We don't wear them all the time, because we're not representing the tradition formally all the time. But I mean, we wear our uncut hair all the time, and that's inconvenient. But that's the nature of being contained by something that's greater than yourself. I mean, if you always do everything you want to do, that runs out of its own steam in the end, and you just get bored, don't you? And you keep moving from thing to thing in order to find what's next, the next exciting thing to do. So you can never get anywhere or change with anything like that because you're always in charge of your own rules. That's the problem, being in charge all the time.
Being the biggest link.
Yes.
I think there's a lack of inspiration as well in being in charge. You know, when you can be inspired by people, like your teachers, that's a wonderful thing, because it's like you come to a retreat and you get re-inspired and you go forward. I think that's a huge aspect as well, isn't it?
I mean, one thing about inspiration is that it doesn't always go one way, it goes both ways.
Yes.
Because teachers, lamas, can get inspired by their students' efforts and the way that people can change, really change. So it's not a one-way system, which is, you wouldn't know that unless you'd experienced it, would you? So it's great.
That's one of the things I found with being a brevet. I felt like this few students that with the Kunzang that helped me to be a better teacher, and yes, and I had that experience of them inspiring me.
However, Jagyür is an inspiring barbecue maestro.
Thank you for listening to another Guru Viking podcast. For more interviews like these, as well as articles, videos, and guided meditations, visit www.guruviking.com.